use the tailstock on the lathe, you have to use a chuck key in order to change bits in and out. So the drill chuck is on one end. If you back off the threads, you can take the whole assembly right out. For the most part, we just leave it stored in the machine. There's a depth gauge on the side. Don't extend past the 3-inch mark, because you can actually unthread this enough for it to fall right out of the tailstock, and then it's difficult to put back together. If you want to make sure that it doesn't move, you can use this handle to lock and hold it still. The chuck key is so that you can change, say, from a drill bit to a center drill. Anytime we're starting off on a lathe, it usually works well to use a center drill as a pilot. And then you can use this tool to tighten. Try to pull on that as hard as you can to make sure that the tool is held tight in the chuck. So this is the chuck of the lathe. Material gets loaded into the center so that it can rotate and spin to machine or modify. The guard should always be down before the machine is ever turned on. The guard can be up as soon as the chuck is no longer spinning, once it's come to a stop. It is a little bit stiff, but this handle opens and closes the jaws so that you can load material. To load material in the lathe, make sure the jaws are open up enough that whatever you're working with can fit in. Ideally, we don't want material to stick out from the edge of the chuck jaws more than 3 times its diameter. So this is a Headstock. Cross is about a 1/2 inch. So we wouldn't want this to stick out ideally any more than 1.5 inches. We'd probably, because of steel, might be able to go a max of 2 inches for the work that we're doing. Any longer than that, and the bar will actually whip when it's at high RPM and shake and vibrate, and cause damage to the cutting tip. So this needs to be really tight, and you always have to make sure you remove the chuck key before moving on to the next step. Since the guard has to be down, the chuck key actually can't fit in. So as long as you put the guard down, that'll always remind you to remove it. This side of the machine is called the headstock. So it's the front where the spindle is, and then at the back side of the machine is the tailstock. So here at the headstock, you have spindle speed controls. For the most part with steel, will stay in the low ranges. And then you look at the pictures that show which direction the lever has to face in order to figure out which RPM we're using. So when we turn this on just the way it is now, it's not spinning very fast. Depending on the diameter of the material and the type of material we're cutting, we have to adjust the speed of the spindle turning to get it to work correctly. So the guard is up purely to video and show you how this works. So we've got our controls down below. I'm going to turn the big wheel to move the cutter closer over to the stock, and then the smaller wheel to move it in and out and get it lined up and set up and ready for a cut. So I will set the camera. You won't be able to see the hand controls quite as well, but you should be able to see what the actual, I just bumped that, my apologies. Move it again, see how that works. So I brought it in fairly close. So it's advancing super slow. I don't want to waste a ton of time. So I'm going to bring the cutter over and just wait until it makes contact with the material. And then I can set the dial to 0. This machine is in metric. So if I move to the first marked setting, it's 0.5 millimeters, so it's a 0.5 millimeter. That should be fairly easy for this machine to cut. You're gonna bring the cutter until it's really close to the workpiece, lift up on the lever, and it'll auto feed in. So it is pretty slow, and it's just taking a tiny little cut. So you're gonna back it off. And I'm gonna increase the cut to 1 millimeter so that it gives you a little bit of a better view. You can barely hear it working because the lathe is super rigid. I'll back it off one more time and I'll take 1 more millimeter depth of cut. So we're now up to 2 millimeters on the dial. And now we're getting a more expected cut. I'll move the camera in a second so you can see a little bit closer. Okay, so turn off the auto feed. Back the cutter away. Turn the machine off. This is where I would normally lift the guard up. I have it out of the way solely just for video. And so this is how we can set up to turn the outside diameter of a part. If we need to drill a hole in the end, one of your first projects will be a metal pen. So you can turn the whole headstock, or not headstock, the whole carriage, and move the cutting assembly all the way out of the way. And you can bring the tailstock close. I'm trying to make sure I don't have anything run into it. There we go. So we bring our tailstock up close to the part. Use the handle to lock and hold it still. You can push pretty hard, but don't be super forceful. It doesn't need a lot of energy put into it. Green button to turn it on. We're in forward. And then I can turn the handle at the back and bring the center drill in. So you can use what I call peck drilling. So you're entering the cut no more than 90 degrees or 1/4 of a turn, and then backing off to help break and clear the chips. And then this, I'll move the release handle, slide down.